afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome along to the first LandLord Lens of 2023. And if it's not too late, I want to wish all our viewers Happy New Year, and also to my co-host, CEO of the NRLA, Ben Beadle. So Happy New Year to you, Ben. And it's so great to be back doing our regular webinar together, where we discuss the trending topics, not only on property tribes, but across the wider landlord community. And well, who would have thought that 2023 would get off to such an incredible start in terms of the amount of activity going on in our sector? And Ben, you've actually been a bit of a trending topic yourself because you and the NRLA have been doing a lot of mainstream media commentary, campaigning, reports, and been getting a lot of coverage. So I think before we get going with that, I just wanted to congratulate you for the Landlord Conference last November. I came along there and I thought it was an absolutely awesome day. And I'm sure you must be absolutely delighted with the response and how it went.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. It's great to be back with you, supporting all that you do. Absolutely fantastic to be back in this forum. And yes, the conference was a great success. I was very, very happy. To be honest, I was really surprised at how many people we got along. We had knocking on for about 600 people there with exhibitors, and it really was a fantastic day. And we are going to be doing another one, I think, in October, and I think it's the, dare I say, the 24th of October in Birmingham. I'm sure the marketing team will be jumping up and down at me saying that, but yeah, it's a great opportunity to show. I mean, particularly the minister and her officials were there as well. To show the responsible landlord at their best. And we had a great array of speakers, exhibitors. It was great to see so many members. We had associations from the Republic of Ireland and others that were there. It was just a lovely, lovely day. Unfortunately, I was stressed as hell, but looking back, I look back very, very fondly, and I'm sort of looking forward to the next one, I think.
Well, talking of housing, Minister, we've had breaking news this afternoon that we've got a new one. Lucy Fraser has left and gone to the Department of Culture and Media. Ben, it must be so frustrating for you as a trade body and lobbying organisation that you make inroads with one individual and you start to learn what they're about and what their thoughts are and where you can, meet with them, and then they're gone. Yeah,
and it's a revolving door. Mr. Pincher, Mr. Hughes, a couple in between for a brief period as well. Look, that's the nature of what we are dealing with. The one thing, though, is that the officials generally behind the scenes are remaining the same, which is very, very helpful. So we can't control that. I am pleased, and I'm checking my phone at the moment just to make sure there aren't any other movements before I say this. I am pleased to see that Felicity Buchan remains in place. We have very, very good relations with Felicity, relations that we've been cultivating because we thought that she might end up in a ministerial position given her PRS constituency. Sorry, given that she's got a big PRS constituency in Kensington, and that has boded very, very well for us. So Lucy Fraser moving on, whatever, but we will continue to make inroads, hopefully with sensible and sane messaging around what is going on in the sector, and there's a lot going on.
Well, there is, and as I said, NRLA have entered 2023 with all guns blazing, creating some quite significant mainstream media coverage, and I thought a good place to start, Ben, would be on that evergreen topic for us, and that's section 24. Interestingly enough, 3 major commentators have come together on this topic in the last week or so. We had the Conservative MP Andrew Lewer writing in Politics Home, saying that there needed to be a review of landlord taxation. We've got a thread on Property Tribes that's been trending, saying conservative speaking sense, which is good. We love that. Then we had the Bank of England. They've released an article this week, or commentary this week, saying that they are concerned by the number of landlords that are leaving the sector and the supply and demand imbalance. And then we had your good self releasing a report and expressing concerns about the impact of Section 24 on the sector. So we've had three major players come together all on the same topic. And as I said, it's been really trending across the media. So well done, Ben. I think good work there.
Anyone would think they're linked, Vanessa. You may say that I couldn't possibly comment. No, look, this is the best way to draw attention to this sort of stuff. I know we'll come on to the petition in a moment, but we have to tell the story of what's going on, and we have to influence individual MPs to tell that story on our behalf. And there's a huge amount of work that has been going on. That said, it's worth remembering that 69% of landlords are actually basic rate taxpayers. So this doesn't affect everybody. It's a big issue for people like me, to be honest with you, and others that are out there, a huge issue. But what we have to do is to tell the story in terms of the consumer context, how that is hurting tenants and how that's hurting supply. Well, actually, the truth is that while some landlords are leaving the sector, this sector is actually still increasing. That's not terribly helpful to our argument, to be honest with you. But in the context of cost of living and rising costs, we have to tell that story and link the two. And so you're right, we have hit the new year all guns blazing, and I'm pleased to say that there is more in the pipeline. We have been busy modelling the impact of Section 24. I say we have commissioned an independent economist, Capital Economics, to do that work. We've included some of that stuff in our budget submission to the Treasury. The Treasury asked for us to come in prior to Christmas to talk about this very issue. And we will be presenting them with our findings in a few weeks' time as well. This is how we make change. I'm not saying that change is going to happen, but you tell a story. And, it is back to, in fact, we were there together, weren't we? The Axe the Tax stuff with
oh, yes, the Axe the Tenants Tax campaign, all those years ago. Yeah.
Wow, crikey.
I tell you, we brought back onto Property Tribes the interview with Lord Howard Flight.
Oh, I saw it, yeah.
He did not hold back. He said the government policy about Section 29, I think he described it as crackers.
Yes, that's right.
But,
but we do need more people like that. And, you have to be able to tell the story. And that's why we're approaching it in this way rather than the petition, to be honest with you, because the petition forces government to entrench its view. As I said in one of the pieces of PR in the past couple of weeks, actually, this is a deliberate and calculated move by government to cool the market, and it's working, right? So, what do you expect them to do? They're going to dig their heels in and they're not going to change. Well, what we have to do is to make sure that MPs and peers and those people of influence start to see the hurt and detriment that it is creating. Petition isn't going to do that. It's about influence and telling that story and using independent evidence. So that's why the Bank of England is hugely helpful, to be honest with you. It's why the Capital Economics report will be helpful to tell the same tale as well. And it's why individual landlords that fall into the Section 24 bracket should write to their MPs, encourage their local MP to write to the Secretary of State, to write to the Chancellor about this issue, because it is so important. That's the way you do it.
Well, indeed. And I think also providing data, because without data, nobody's going to listen. And I know this from my own experience of trying to create some change, you know, within the wealth creation industry sector. I've got a few things going on in the background that I hope will make a positive difference. I'm talking to some serious industry stakeholders and people within government, but they all want to know data. How many people are affected? How much money has been lost? These kind of figures. And until you curate that, Ben, that they're not going to really listen to you. They want the data, don't they?
Bluntly, nobody wants a sob story about landlords paying more tax, right? That is the world in which we live. You know, so we have to tell the story of hardship from the other side. And, you know, the other point is that we need more homes of all tenures. You know, you asked me about a Labour government in the future. Well, you can forget Section 24 being abolished under Labour. That just would never happen. Now's our chance. I thought there was a bigger chance during the 45 days of the Truss administration. And I was very, you know, she was very, very clear about, you know, being low tax. Well, you know, Rishi Sunak made himself out to be a low tax chancellor when he was, but he, you know, is not, and he wasn't. And Jeremy Hunt is of the same mold. So, you know, we have to be very, very realistic, I think, about the circumstances that we are in, and be prepared to move away from anecdote to fact. And that's what the association is doing.
Yes, I understand. You did get a little bit of flack in certain quarters for supposedly not supporting the petition. It did achieve 32,000 plus views at the time of recording this. I think it's going to be online until May. And because it passed the 10,000 signatures mark, it did get a response from the government. But as you said, Ben, it was just the same old, same old. It's almost like they've got these trite responses standing by. It didn't show any shift of movement at all. I do think it was interesting that the petition has so far got over 30,000. There's been a number of petitions in the past, and they haven't achieved that amount of signatures. So that could be an indication that, you know, landlords are becoming more aware of the issue and they're more affected by it. But I completely understand your position, and that you have to do things in a certain way, you know, to keep that dialogue going with the powers that be.
Let me be clear, Vanessa, we absolutely share the concern of landlords out there about Section 24. What I would like to see is those 32,000 landlords write to their MPs as well as sign the petition. You know, whether you sign the petition is entirely up to you. But given the government have responded in the way that they have, what do you expect to change between now and May? You know, so by all means sign it, but write to your MP at the same time. But this is top of the in tray for us. We've just got a slightly different way of dealing with it. And I appreciate there's concern out there, but I do want people to know that this is absolutely, you know, one of the mission critical things of many. There are quite a few hot potatoes at the moment, but certainly for me, you know, Section 24 and stamp duty and the fiscal environment that we are in, you know, if we want more homes to be available, then that's a really quick way of being able to make homes available to people, because we're not going to be able to build social homes, you know, in the same speed. If we can play with the tax levers and create the environment that people want to invest, then that's going to be better for everybody. And that's the story we're telling and we'll continue to tell.
Fantastic. Well, I just wanted to let everybody know that if you want to keep up to date with what the NRLA is campaigning over, do visit that tab on their website. There's regular updates about all the campaigns that they're working on. So do check it out if you want to keep up to date above and beyond the webinars that the NRLA do. The chat box is open, the Q&A box. Jenny Davis has said, agree with providing facts. Can we not provide facts to show that the majority of landlords are good, to negate the anecdote by MPs from all parties that all landlords are bad? This is fundamental, as MPs from all parties all use us as a reason not to be fair to landlords with the changes they want to make. And you and I, Ben, have talked at length, and indeed when we rather how should we say, knocked heads at the Conservative Party conference with other people on our panel, that we don't like this anti-landlord rhetoric. And I think some people will know I was on Newsnight about 2.5 weeks ago, and it for me, it was very uncomfortable. It was like walking on eggshells, because every question was loaded. And I had to think so carefully about what I was going to say, because I really felt that I could be, tripped up. And at sort of halfway through, I said, are you talking to other landlords on this topic? And he went, no, you're here to represent all landlords. And I thought, I don't feel very comfortable about that. I've got my personal view, but it was very much about damp and mold in the private rented sector. They were very much up in arms about it on the side of tenants, which of course any damp and mold in any property, rental, or indeed somebody's home is a serious issue and needs urgent attention. So Ben, I just wanted to commend you for you've been on GB News and you've been on other mainstream media, and I think you've handled the anti-landlord slant so well. I don't envy you doing what you do.
Bless you, Vanessa. That's really, really kind. I mean, my job is to put forward the voice and the views of the responsible landlord, and to make the point that there is a difference. You cannot tarnish every landlord with one brush. And
you can't tarnish all tenants with one brush, can you?
Exactly right, and that is the point that we make. And in answer to the question, actually, I've seen from Felicity Buck and actually Michael Gove recently of them singling out and recognising that responsible landlords have a role. I have a letter from Mr. Gove that I will reveal in the coming days, which is equally as favourable of that view. But it's all well and good to say these things, but actions speak louder than words, and that's the point, I think. Yes, the sort of unhelpful rhetoric needs to change, and I think I've seen some evidence that is changing, but that then needs to translate into actually backing the PRS, backing the role of the responsible landlord, and that's what we're absolutely pushing for. And the point about the media, yes, we do a lot of these things, and we exchanged messages about this, Vanessa, didn't we? Bluntly, you have to know what you're kind of going into, because although people are sort of saying that, MPs are very divisive in their language about landlords, Christ, the media, if you saw some of the stuff that you get asked and that you don't see, it really is, people have just a preconceived idea about what being a landlord is and treat it as fact. I mean, it's absolutely horrific, and I understand where that comes from, but the point is, and this is why we speak in the way that we do, we don't represent everybody. We take the view that if you join a trade association such as ours, that you want to do the right sort of thing. You want to look after your tenants, you want to have access to the advice line and the correct documents and forms and the right sort of suppliers. Well, that already sets you out from the crowd, and that ought to count for something. We have to keep telling that story, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's consistency, having that story. And yeah, I mean, it's been actually very interesting to see how much the story of shortage of rental supply, it's not actually just been in the sort of typical MSM that you would expect. I sent you that article where it was in a woman's magazine about a flat hunter in London, and she was competing against people that were willing to pay 1 or 2 years rent in advance. And I think it shows how acute the crisis is in terms of supply, not across the entire UK, but in certain, you know, cities and areas, it is acuter than other areas. And yeah, it's a very challenging environment for everybody, because it's against the backdrop of, you know, the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis and all the other crises that we keep having in this country. So it's not easy for anybody, actually.
It's absolutely not, and that was the point. In fact, it's not gone out. There's some clips going out on ITV News later this week about the cost of living. And I was, well, assuming they play the clip that I hope that they're going to play, I was explaining that, you know, why do people think that landlords are somehow immune from the cost of living crisis? I mean, Jesus Christ, you know, talk about being tone deaf to what's going on. You know, part of the reason why we're seeing this is because we're actually all in the same boat. All of our costs are increasing, not least mortgage costs, not least our inability to offset those costs. So not only are you paying more on your mortgage, you're also not able to offset that legitimate cost from your tax return. What the hell do you expect to happen? Seriously, and this is why, you know, we can so confidently lay some of these issues at government's door. You know, they are all controllable. They're all controllable. You know, you don't have a disastrous mini budget. Yes, I get, you know, energy costs being caused but in part by the war in Ukraine. But, you know, you can't pin everything on that in the way that is being described. So, you know, we have to be careful what we wish for on some of this stuff. And that's why I was very pleased in the launch of the report that the piece of research that we did a week or so ago with Chris Walker, to have Baroness Kennedy of Generation Rent on there, who actually is a very nice lady. We obviously have differing views on life, but she's a very pleasant lady. Well, I'd like her to back our, you know, our quest for fair tax environment for property owners, because we're a homogenous group and tenants will benefit from it. I have no doubt that if you were to make some concessions and tweaks around the ability to offset your mortgage interest, that tenants would benefit from that as well. And if you were to think about getting rid of the additional rate of stamp duty, well, you'd have more homes that were available for people. That would bring down the cost of rents. It would mean that people pay less. It would mean that people would be able to save more to be able to acquire their own property. And that was the point of the research. You know, if you want to turn generation rent into generation buy, well, you need to have a vibrant private rented sector that's affordable.
No, absolutely. And that research did extremely well across across the media. And if anybody has missed it, you can go on to the NRLA website, and there is a whole page that explains the media coverage and where it was featured and so on. So that's really good. I think one thing that isn't so quantifiable, Ben, that landlords need is certainty. And there's a lot of uncertainty about, and landlords and uncertainty don't really go together. And this brings me on to my next topic. Did you see how well I just seeged that together?
Seamless, my darling, absolutely seamless.
We have got a thread on Property Tribes. It's an interview with a gentleman called Jason Harris Cohen. He's a young chap, and he has got about 100 properties. He does a lot of trading. He's got a lot of different property businesses, very entrepreneurial young man. And he basically said to me on the interview, he said, if Section 21 goes, I'm out. And that for him was the final straw. And everybody will have a different final straw. But the removal of Section 21 was it for him. And that thread has had a lot of comments on it. Some people, you know, agreeing 100%. Some people saying, I don't really understand why you would say that. But I do think, Ben, that, you know, it's the devil is in the detail, because I was thinking of the scenario is what happens if you have to get vacant possession of a property to do your energy upgrades to meet the new EPC ratings. That's not the fault of the tenant. Should there be a clause government fault. I just thought of that.
Government fault, excellent. There'll be a lot of faults put at their door, that's for sure. Look, I think the whole issue around Section 21, I'm not going to say anything controversial on this subject, but if that chap doesn't feel confident about bringing his properties to market, that's a personal decision for him. He will do what suits his business, right? And this is the point. And not just in housing, right? At the moment, we have a massive crisis of confidence, I think, in the political class, in the economy, the whole, literally from start to finish, right? So, I don't feel that we're in a hugely positive place at the moment. From a housing context, the same applies. And I like to remind ministers why Section 21 was brought in all those years ago. It was brought in to give landlords confidence to A, bring their properties to the market, and B, that if there was a problem, that they could get it back quickly, cheaply, and fairly. Now, the world has changed, right? There is no political appetite for Section 21 to remain, whether we would like it to or not. And so what we have to do is to carve out the best possible alternative to what that looks like. And that will mean different things to different people. I'm very concerned at the moment, Vanessa, about antisocial behaviour. And that's one of the things that is also at top of our in trade, because under the plans in the white paper, and I've spoken with Gove, who is in charge of antisocial behaviour, Gove's team, and Felicity Buchan, who's the minister responsible for the PRS, and they recognise this as a concern. Because without being too geeky about it, the new ground that is proposed relies on a criminal conviction. Well, I spoke about confidence. If you've seen the court system and the backlogs and how long it takes to get through all of these things at the moment, well, criminal conviction, you could well be a very old person by the time you get to have a conviction against a tenant, and by that time all your other tenants would have left. So that's dead in the water. And the other one is an existing discretionary ground that relies on the judge to take a view. Well, as you well know, if you need to get robust evidence from other tenants, etc., well, you're probably not going to get that. And so there does need to be action taken in relation to antisocial behaviour. The minister called a meeting at our behest, which she announced at our conference, actually. That took place on the 20th of December, 21st of December, where, choose my words carefully, I think there was some mixed views about the ability for landlords to recover their properties in this way. There were one or two tenant groups there that felt that all avenues should be explored when it came to the underlying reasons for antisocial behaviour. Well, I'm sorry, this is not the social sector. And I was very, very clear that, I can understand the rationale of abolishing Section 21. Whether I agree with it is neither here nor there, but I understand the rationale for it. It cannot be right, though, if you abolish it, that when it comes to antisocial behaviour, that the balance tilts in favour of the perpetrator and understanding their needs and why they're doing all of these awful things, whether it's drugs or violence or noise or whatever antisocial behaviour entails. It's not right that the balance tilts in their favour rather than the victim's favour. I mean, Jesus Christ, what's all that about? So we're pushing very, very hard on making sure that the discretionary ground is as achievable as possible, and that the court service prioritizes antisocial behaviour with minimal notice periods, goes straight to the top of the tree, and that there's a really clear guidance about what constitutes antisocial behaviour, so that it can be easily recognised. We want to see the property portal and local authorities using that in a sensible way so that landlords know about it. And I want to see agencies that social housing tap into made available to private landlords as well. I know that our friends at a well-known tenant group that sounds like Helter disagree with that, but I'm afraid you can't have your cake and eat it. For serious cases of antisocial behaviour, landlords must be able to deal with it robustly. End of story.
No, I totally agree. And you've got the double whammy of, you know, knowing that the abolition of Section 21 is on the horizon, but not actually knowing when it's actually going to be ratified and come through. So yeah, it's so much uncertainty for landlords. And you touched on it earlier, Ben. We've got another trending topic, our last one, because I'm just mindful of the time, but we've got over 190 people on the webinar and we've only had about 4 questions. So please feel free to jump into the chat window and ask any questions you've got. We've got a few minutes at the end. This is your chance to talk directly to Ben. And actually on that topic, Ben, we should mention that you're going on tour. We've got the NRLA tour coming up.
Yeah.
So I think that's a grand idea. So you're going to be going around to lots of different local rep areas and meeting with members and having special guests and rock and roll. Ben on tour.
I feel like I need a tour bus or something. Vanessa. What a megaphone. No, it's great.
Abolish Section 24 written on it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love getting out to meet members and showcasing the work that we are doing. So yeah, if you guys check out the sort of events page on our website, we've got a number of sort of mini conferences coming up, and look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, I think that's really great you're doing that. I've got a little assistant to help me with the final topic. He's appeared just in time. You can see this colour that he's wearing. And we had a thread on Property Tribes, which I actually thought was really excellent. How should landlords prepare for a Labour government? Now, that you should go on to the Property Tribes and read that thread if you're interested, and indeed join in. That's what it's there for. But, you know, again, uncertainty, Ben. They've made a lot of very hard-hitting statements about their policies towards landlords. If they could be even worse than the Conservatives, well, they are. You know, my feeling was almost like, well, you know, last landlord, turn out the light when you go.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I do worry about it, to be honest with you, Vanessa. I mean, as I probably said on this before, we're engaging very heavily with Labour, with moderate and the more sort of hardcore faction of the party. I mean, I don't know how I can sort of put this across, but it will be different. It will be very, very different. We have been in touch with Lisa Nandy and Lisa Nandy's office. In fact, I randomly bumped into her outside Parliament last week and said hello to her. But you know, with every sort of you know, headline grabbing announcement, you know, rental reform within 100 days, return social housing to the second largest tenure, rent control, local rent control. With every type of announcement, you do need an element of pragmatism, because, you know, if they want to invest in the social housing stock, good. Quite frankly, there's 1 million people on waiting lists. And you know, I see a comment in the chat about the condition of social housing. You know, there's lots for them to get their teeth into, right? But I do feel that they will need to deliver some way on that manifesto, but there will be enough moderate MPs within there to kind of water it down a little bit, would be my view.
Well, I'm so interested to hear that, Ben. That's really interesting.
You can make me eat the words in 2020.
Yes, I saw you choosing them very, very carefully then. Actually, we've had a couple of questions from Chris Young and Zelena Sabe-Bayeva, who are both asking about EPCs and when the new legislation is going to come in. And again, Ben, this is causing so much uncertainty amongst the landlord community, because I think it's already been moved back to 2025. Is that right? And we just don't really know when it's going to come in, and landlords are wondering whether to, in these challenging kind of economic conditions, whether now is to spend 10,000–15,000 pounds on energy upgrades if it suddenly doesn't become an issue in a couple of years' time. So again, that word coming into play, uncertainty.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, you would have seen, I think, some of our PR around this saying that government's plans are dead in the water. It's absolutely farcical to launch a hand grenade in the manner that they have and then say, chuff all else, spook the market and not say anything. We had thought there might be something going into the energy bill. We then heard that there wasn't anything going to go into it. But obviously today, and I've not checked the very, very latest news, but I think there was the idea that sort of the energy kind of be separated out a little bit from in terms of government. So Grant Shapps, I think, is now Secretary of State. That might be giving an indication that this is an important thing as sort of Rishi Sunak kind of resets or reshapes the agenda for the next period. I think my view on this is, for full disclosure, all my properties are D. They don't require a huge amount to get them to a C, if I recall correctly. But I'd kind of been in the camp that I'm going to leave them where they are. Given these sort of energy problems that we're facing at the moment in terms of cost of, it might be worth taking a look, because I'm sure that this is inevitable. It's a question of when, not if. So I do think that the argument has been won about a longer lead-in period, maybe not as long as we would like, but I don't think it will be 2025, simply because there's been such a delay. I think 2028 may well stay the same. And I do hope that there will be some concessions about the level of the cap. But it might be worth people thinking about, because for the moment there will be an advantage if you're able to demonstrate, not that anybody has really asked me for an EPC and how much it costs to heat the home, but I can well see that in the future, by starting early, you might be ahead of the curve and spreading some of the costs. So it might be worth thinking about, because I do think this is inevitable. It's just a question of how painful it's going to be and how quick it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear your insights. We've got an anonymous attendee asking a question about setting up an HMO. It's actually quite a specific question. I think we would recommend, whoever you are, that you use the NRLA advice line. That's what it's there for. What times is it open, Ben?
Oh, it's a good question. Half 8 to half 5.
I think it's 9 to 5:30 during the week, and I think it's open for 3 hours on Saturday morning, something
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
So I call it Phone a Friend for Landlords. That's what it's there for.
It's quite a lot of questions now all of a sudden, isn't there?
Yeah, just as we're getting to the end. Can a tenant receiving universal credit who does not pay the housing benefit to the landlord be prosecuted for fraud? Well, I guess yes, in theory. In reality, no. There just isn't the resources to enforce that.
It's absolutely outrageous.
It's terrible that taxpayers' money gets siphoned off. It's very difficult to talk about, but I have heard some stories of I heard of one lady who, every time her UC was paid, her son came, beat her up, got the money off her, and went down the bookies.
Jesus Christ.
Mm. So yeah, I mean, it's terrible that taxpayers' money doesn't go to the purpose that it was intended, and that there's very little that is done about it. That's probably a whole webinar in its own right. Let's have a look. Jeffrey has said that with regards to Section 24, one of his main concerns is that as a standard rate taxpayer, that he could be pushed into a higher rate tax band because the bands obviously haven't been moved for a long time and are set to be frozen. And clearly that wouldn't happen if we were taxed on profit and not revenue. So he says, do you think there's a realistic chance of the government changing this, even though they won't allow more than the 20% tax credit?
I mean, at the moment, the government have been very, very clear that there are, that there are no changes to be made. I mean, it really is as simple as that, and that's why we are working so hard to tell the story. Really about the knock-on consequences of unfair taxation. That's why we've asked for a full review of the impact of Section 24 and other taxes on the property sector, so that people can form a holistic view about the impact of doing something and the knock-on effect, which we say is not helping rents, it's not helping supply, etc., etc. But no, for the moment.
Okay. Charmaine Hickman, she wants to know the list of your tour dates, Ben. She can't see it on the NRLA. It is there. I've seen it myself. If you go onto the NRLA YouTube channel, the first video has been launched, which is for, I think it's Leeds, isn't it, Ben?
That's right.
If you look underneath the video in the narrative box, there is a link to the details of the event, when, where, and how to register. And those videos are going to be added as each event starts to come along. So you can go via the YouTube channel, or you can go direct to the events tab on the NRLA website. Well, there you've got one person coming, Ben.
Oh, there you go. What can I say? I won't be alone. I'll buy you a drink. So the first one is the 7th of March in Leeds, as you rightly observe. But there are a whole range of different events, not just the sort of tour events. We do about 300 events a year. It's absolutely bonkers, a mix of in-person and online. So those are in the calendar on the event section, but do check out the video that Vanessa has said. Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end now, and Ben and I, we don't like to be too doom and gloom, and we like to end on a positive note. And we've got a thread that I actually started on Property Tribes called "Are You a Property Optimist?" Because I went to see South Pacific, and there's a wonderful song in it called "I'm a Cockeyed Optimist." And I sort of thought about, well, whenever there's something bad in property, you can always flip it over and see a silver lining to a dark cloud. So Ben, are you a property optimist?
Well, I am. I've not sold any of mine. I'm looking at renewing them in the summer. As you probably know, I'm operate mostly in the student sector. I'm sticking for as long as I can, really. I mean, it helps that I've fixed my mortgages for a fairly lengthy period of time, except for one, which is coming up in November. And this, I always say, don't copy the advice I give. I need to fully understand the impact of what mortgage rates are going to look like when it gets there. But I know it's a 6-bed. It's 3.86% at the moment. I know if I go on their variable rate, that will increase to 8.15. That is a disgrace in itself, given that the level of the interest rates are at. It's pretty much double. So anyway, I need to cost all of that. But for me, I'm going nowhere.
Excellent. Well, we've actually got quite a few questions about EPCs. Clearly a trending topic on our webinar today. We haven't got time to deal with them, but what I would say is if you go onto YouTube and just put in LandLord Lens as your search term, it will bring up all our previous webinars. And Ben and I have talked at length about EPCs, so you should be able to dive into some of the older recordings and just see how we answered some of these questions. So I would recommend that you do that, and please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Sorry, I've got another visitor. The NRLA have put a lot of effort into building their video library now, and you've got some really good stuff on there, Ben.
Yeah, no, there's loads of really interesting stuff on the YouTube channel. It's certainly something we put a lot of time and effort into to sort of, get the message out about some of the stuff that we've got going on. But just a couple of quick points, Vanessa,
sure.
on the EPC stuff. I see there's a point in there around consent and some of the difficulties. A question here from Adrian Thompson Hayes. This is something that we have been pointing out to government. It was something in our piece of work with Localis about the difficulty in being able to do some of this stuff. So it's not a full answer, but it's very much something that has been conveyed to BEIS and also to a couple of the committees that I spoke at before Christmas. It's not that there isn't a willingness to want to do it. It's how all of this stuff intertwines with planning and that sort of jazz. So we certainly recognize that as an issue. And maybe I might just pick out one or two more, Vanessa,
go for it.
If you don't mind. Anonymous attendee, does Ben think he probably has less than 2 years to get Section 24 changed because Labour won't? Yes, I think that's exactly right. Anonymous attendee, I think it'd be dead in the water when we turn red. And there was a question from Stella Saunders about, are we meeting and working with housing pressure groups, i.e. shelter, who often seem to be bad-mouthing landlords? Yes, I mean, hopefully you would have seen my open letter to Polly last summer. Polly also came on to one of our podcasts where we spoke very candidly about some of the challenges and issues as we see them. So do have a little listen to the Listen Up Landlords. Listen Up Landlords podcast. Forgot the name of it then. Around some of these things, but it's really important that we have a dialogue. We don't have to agree on everything. On the contrary, but I am in regular contact with Alicia Kennedy of Generation Rent, of Matt Downey of Crisis, with whom we've got a partnership, and Shelter as well. Yes, there's plenty of things we disagree on, but it's really important to find areas of synergy rather than finding areas of discord, because the latter will find us.
No, I totally agree with that approach, Ben. I think it's really good that you've built so many bridges with some of the key tenant unions and charities and so on. I think it's really excellent that you're doing that, and you've definitely raised the profile of the voice of landlords in the UK, and I just got to commend you for that. So well done. Well, that's pretty much it for our first Landlord Lens of 2023. It's flown past. We do have to limit the topics we talk about because there's actually so much to talk about. We could probably go on for a couple of hours chit-chatting away, but we're very grateful to everybody that's joined us today. We hope you've got value from it. It will be a recording on the NRLA website in the next day or two if you want to revisit anything. And if you've got any questions, Ben is on Twitter. You can find him at Beadle Ben. He's also on LinkedIn. Ben, I'm sending so many people your way.
I know. Oh, and you can track me down on Facebook as well. I do like to interact with as many people as possible, so do feel free to get in touch.
Likewise to me. So thanks for everybody for watching, and Ben, pleasure to see you, and looking forward to our next Landlord Lens, and who knows what we'll be turning our spotlight on. I think everything's just changing so quickly in our sector. It's very volatile, it's ever changing, and it's very important that we do discuss these issues. So I thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All the best, folks.